Welcome to the Insider's Insight podcast, where we share with you the thoughts of the individuals who are working for projects that are changing the world. Welcome to Insider's Insight. Today I have Sydney Xiong, who is the director of ApeNFT. And today we're going to have a conversation about how crypto is going to merge the traditional and digital art collections. But before we go into that conversation, Sydney, why don't you introduce yourself, introduce your journey into crypto, and also introduce what ApeNFT is all about?
Okay, hi. First of all, thanks, Xiong, for inviting me to this podcast. And let me just do a very brief introduction of myself firstly. My name is Sydney, and before I studied economics in Amsterdam, Netherlands before. And after studied economics, I took a gap year, and that's when I went to Nepal to do a 6 months volunteer. And in the next 6 months, I traveled all over the world, and that's when I decided that I want to move to art. And I went to Paris to continue my study, and that's where I studied marché de l'art, which means art market and art history in Paris. So after...
Okay, before that, Sydney, I just want to unpack everything you've said because it's quite interesting. So what drew you to traveling to Nepal?
Because I always love the culture of this sort of, looks very mysterious, but also religious, and in the same time, not a very popular place for the tourists or, I don't know, people who love to go, but that's why they attract me. What did you learn there? Actually, I spent 6 months in the school that I cook and teach English and Chinese to all the orphans there, and we did successfully organized an auction that we tried to raise up money for them so that they can rebuild their schools, and that went well, quite successful. I think we have raised up like nearly $5,000 in the end, and I think that's a very unforgivable experience.
Why did you then decide to travel the world after that experience? What was it that drove you to want to see more of the world? Why not start working straight away after that experience?
Because during the time I was in Nepal, actually, I did spend 3 months in Nimar in a meditation center. That's where I did nothing but just meditation every day. So after I spent like 3 months there, I said, okay, I want to go to Paris. I want to learn art, and I want to begin my own collection at that time. And that's when I began to travel, and I went to Berlin, I went to Prague, I went to Thailand, almost everywhere except America. And then I said, okay, I'll go to Paris. That's how I began.
Which year was this, and why art specifically? Because you studied economics, so it's quite a big jump from economics to art.
I think it's 5 years ago, and the reason I love art, I think it's because at the time when I was in Amsterdam, Van Gogh and all Mondrian, all the great artists that came from the Netherlands, I did enjoy a lot visiting just the galleries and museums there, and I do had a lot of artist friends at that time, and I think after discussing with them, and I just to find myself the true passion of myself, and I think it's art. That's the reason that I went to Paris.
It's quite interesting you said that, because I went to Amsterdam in 2016, and of course in Amsterdam they're famous for a couple of things, and one of those things that they're famous for, I remember I was partaking in those activities and walking around the city, and you realize how beautiful Amsterdam is, because firstly, the way the city is formatted is that it is in circles, right? All the roads are circular, and they all kind of they all meet up at the center point, which is where the station is. And then there's a very famous park there called Vondel Park. So we were walking down that park and just walking around the city. And I remember at that time, because my time in Amsterdam was only, I think 2 days and 1 night. So I didn't have too long to enjoy the city. But I remember walking and seeing Van Gogh's paintings, whilst partaking in these activities, and they were moving. It was kind of like a moving picture for me. The way he painted the paintings, you could see the clouds moving, you could see the grass swaying, you could see the tree moving. And I think it was that experience that made me realize that I really enjoy visual art. The problem is I do feel that in the art world, there's a lot of fake artists that basically, they can make money from art because they know how to talk about art, but what they're drawing is quite generic. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yes, exactly. Actually, when you said that this sentence, there are a few names that just came up to my mind that I think, we can say that, but obviously I'm not going to mention their names, but I think they do have a group of artists that they call themselves artists, but actually they are just very good businessmen, or they are just good and sell themselves or sell a story to people. But instead of just practice or learn art history or try to appreciate as many as possible good arts, they just go out and social and have a group of rich collectors to support them, and they can have a very chill life, I think. Yeah. This is, this is sad, but this is how business works. Actually, because in the end, art is still a business. That's that's the people like us, art advisors or gallerists or the people who work in the auction house get a job because we are all in the art market.
Yes, I agree. I was listening to a podcast called Freakonomics, and they actually did a 3-part series on art. It was really, really interesting. And I'm sure we can talk about this later on, but I just wanted to say, I think that what crypto is going to do is it's going to help make art be bought again for enjoyment rather than for purely speculative investments or for the sake of, showing off to people that I have this piece of art. Because at the end of the day, there's nothing more subjective than art. And if you are buying art purely because you've been advised to do so, rather than just thinking, oh, I really like this piece, that basically doesn't leave a lot of room for smaller artists to grow up because they haven't got that reputation to sell their art. So, they aren't able to get into the mind frame or the mind state of everyday consumers because it's just such an elitist community that they've built to make art seem very exclusive. Whereas I think crypto is going to make art much more inclusive. So you'll buy art just because you like it. You don't need any other reason to buy something just because you like it. So yeah, I mean, I'm hoping that with crypto, we're going to see people just buying art and putting it in their wall for the sake of telling people, oh, I like this piece of art. It's interesting to me.
I hope so, but I do think that as for collections, there are a bunch of people, they do buy art because they love art. Like you said, they are very pure. They are just devoted to the things they love, and they have the money, they have the time, they can get to choose the pieces, the most valuable pieces in the world. But at the same time, there are a group of people that we call flippers. They do buy art because art is part of the investments as well. That's how our advisors, we do. We not only train the eyes or train the taste of our clients or collectors, but at the same time, we do calculate or do the investment analyze for them, because art at the end of the day is still, it still has value and it can go up and go down. And we do have a primary market and secondary market, and the auction house, we have the guarantee, the third party guarantee, and all the biddings, they have a very complicated and mysterious logic and structures. That's where we fit in, and we do our best to help our clients to do the math or do the jobs, or and at the same time we pick the good art for them. But I don't think that there's never gonna have the collectors buy art just because they love it. They always have a group of people, they just buy art because they want to flip it like that.
Maybe you could maybe you could talk more about your art career.
Yeah. So after during when I was still studied in Paris, I did a lot of internships in different galleries and art fairs and auction house, like FIAC, Art Paris, and Asian art. All this sort of experience gave me the idea that how the art market actually works, and at the same time I studied art history in Musée du Louvre. And that's where I get all the the book knowledge and the social knowledge. And after graduation, I was very lucky. I got to know a collector that is from a very old money family in Europe, who is based in Swiss. And actually they are the shareholder of one of the most expensive watch in the world. And they have been collecting for like 5 decades. They have a very huge and strong collections, including Basquiat, Picasso, Monet, and Soulages, all these big names and blue chip artists. And they are looking for an art advisor that are young, but also very enthusiastic and Western post-war and contemporary art. And that's when they found me, and that's how I began my art advisor journey. And after that, I began to write and interview as well in the art world, and I got to know some big art veterans in our art market. And that's when I get to know, more and more people and get to attend more and more affairs. So I went back to China this June, and after 1 month stayed in the hotel and staying in my home, I went to Beijing this July, and that's when I began to take charge of ApeNFT Foundation, which is a foundation we collect not only traditional art but as well as NFT art. Yeah.
Oh, wow. I see. So the ApeNFT Foundation is also in the traditional art world.
Yes. I don't know if you have read the news. We just bought the Giacometti Lene last month in the New York Sotheby's, the McLoy collection. Yeah. Anyway,
I did not know this.
Yeah. Anyway, we bought a lot of big names in the traditional art world, like Picasso, Andy Warhol, Kaus, and Giacometti. But in the meantime, we do bought a lot of NFT artworks as well, like Beeple, Park Favor shows, these sort of things. Yeah.
So what was your first experience with crypto?
My first experience, that is when I was told by a friend. He told me that there's a token that you should buy immediately, and I didn't know anything, but I trust him, and so that I begin to put my money in that. But just after 2 days, the token went to zero, and it's totally a failure. And after that, I asked some of my friends in the crypto world. I know that they are quite experienced. I asked them, I don't know nothing about crypto, but I do want to invest some of my money in the crypto world. So which tokens you recommend me to buy? And they all said you should just buy ETH or Bitcoin or BNB. So that's how I began, and that's how I still do right now.
And how long ago was this?
Like, it's not quite long, like 1 year before.
1 year ago. And now that you work in crypto, more than just the financial gains, do you have any other thoughts about it? Has it changed your opinion about what it is?
Actually, before I really went into the crypto world, I must admit that I know nothing about crypto. And after I really step by step went to the crypto world, I found it very, very fascinating and interesting and very challenging. The people here, I think they really don't sleep or rest. They really work 24/7, and there are always always the new trend or hot topics that happened every day, and you just need to keep reading and study and to see what all the KOLs are saying and discussed in the meantime. So that's really a quite hard job, because at the same time I need to keep up with my art world experience, that I need to still stick to art. So for me, there are two sides of work that I need to work, and crypto, I must say, it's very hard, but I'm trying.
When you think and look at NFTs, what were your initial reactions to it? Because you come from the traditional art world, and now that you've been working in crypto for half a year, how has those initial thoughts changed?
I still remember that this March, when I first saw people's work that was sold in Christie's, I can't understand anything. I think it's a little bit ridiculous, and I think it's more like a capital move instead of, really appreciate its aesthetic value. So, but, since now we know Beeple personally, because we are Beeple's collector as well, I begin to know how Beeple's artworks, how he thought and how he planned to create, how his creation that is going to be applied in his artworks. I think there do have a kind of a specific language for the NFT artists. And I don't know if you know anything about Park, but I am such a great fan of Park's artworks. And he just sold his artworks called Merge in Nifty Gateway, more than $69,000 million, which is going to be the most expensive artworks in the world. And I really appreciate the philosophy and how his ideas behind the creative artworks. I think this is how NFT artist is going to change, and it's going to be differentiated from the traditional artists. Yeah.
What about for new artists? Do you think it's going to change how they view how they should do their workflow? I mean, if you are a new artist, what should you do to make this into a career?
Actually, that's kind of very interesting, because ApeNFT, we have established an art competition called Second Life just 2 months ago. That's how we plan to support all the crypto native artists. We have set up like 15 winners in the end that we want to promote them. But the standard that how we choose the artworks and winners are very easy, because there are more than 1,000 artists that apply for this competition that we just hold Second Life. And we finally chose the last 15 winners because their works are very, very crypto native. But the reason I said crypto native is because you need to have a different language that is apart from the traditional artworks. That's not really a painting or sculpture or installation. It's really based on your knowledge to crypto or to computer or to different new technologies. That's how we appreciate that. I think the new artists these days, if they want to make their names in crypto, they really need to be creative instead of, just copying or move the traditional artworks stuff into online, or just scan a photo and put it on the blockchain and call it NFTs. Yeah.
Wow, that's interesting. So basically, we're going to see this NFT artwork be a completely different category. That's what you're saying.
Yeah, because for me, I think NFT art is going to be like the pop art in the, before like Andy Warhol period. And that time, nobody think Andy Warhol's art is art. They think it's just graffiti on the wall, in the different district. And nobody appreciate that. But now, Andy Warhol is an icon that we said, oh, he's the father of pop art, because he really invented a new language that, whatever things you paint on the wall, we can call it art. And just like right now, people don't think that NFT art is art because they said, oh, it's just something you draw on your computer or put it on the blockchain. You can never say it's art. But I think there's always going to have someone like Andy Warhol in the NFT field as well, that people are going to say, oh, you really invented a new thing. That is, we are going to put this thing in the art history. And I think in 10 to 15 years, we are going to know which person we are talking about right now. Yeah.
what happens to traditional art when this happens? Do we start to see a decline in the number of traditional artists out there as they move to NFT art? Or do we see traditional art somehow end up in the blockchain? Or what do you think is going to be the future of art?
Yeah, this is quite interesting because since our connections to all the galleries and the auction house and artists, I do got the chance to talk to a lot of very prestigious traditional blue chip artists. And their attitudes towards NFTs are quite interesting because most of them just reject to learn what the NFT trend is. They know that, NFT, everybody's talking about it, but they refuse to learn what NFT is because they are so comfortable in their, their already established reputation and career. And they just said, NFT is just another way people to gain money or, flip or investment. I don't know. But we do see some of the artists that they try to get into the crypto world. I don't know if they really want to study the new languages or they just want to win another money because they see that NFT is such a trend. But I think that really depends. But I don't think that the traditional artist is going to the number of traditional artists is going to decline because there is. People always need something on their wall. And I don't think after centuries and centuries collection that we have built right now, the traditional art is going to be disappeared. But I do think that art market is going to grow bigger and bigger because NFT art is going to be a new category and we are going to include in the whole art ecosystem. Yeah.
One of the areas that I think might be quite interesting is if you can get somehow traditional art on the blockchain to verify ownership and to verify how valid the painting is. Because I do know that in the art world, there are many fakes out there that have been caught and have not been caught. And depending on how good the forger is, especially those who used to forge art hundreds of years ago, it's quite difficult to know if you have something that is real or if you have something that someone has forged. And even if it has been forged, what type of value does that have? Because obviously, if you have a forgery of if you have a copycat of a Monet 400 years ago, they created an art piece that looks like Monet, but isn't Monet. That in itself is also art, right? It will have a value of itself. Obviously, it may not be as valuable as a Monet. It may be even more valuable because the value is quite subjective. So I do see blockchain playing a part in bringing the art world, traditional art world, into the blockchain space. And when that happens, or if that happens, do you think that we could see something like fractional ownership of different artworks like we do with NFTs?
I think it's such a coincidence because we are really working on the fractional ownership right now as ApeNFT, that our group is actually studying all the already had fractional ownership projects in the market right now because we are really considering do this thing for our art collections. Like we have all the traditional art pieces that we are thinking about. Instead of just have one collector, how about we do the fractional ownership thing because I don't know if you read our white paper for ApeNFT, our mission is that let high art belong to all people. And that's, I think, where fractional ownership is going to be.
How would it work in terms of putting the painting on your wall? Do you think we could have a point in time where, for example, say we have traditional art pieces, they've been fractionalized, owned, and if you own a part of this collection, maybe you get an NFT, which then you can then print it out, put it on your wall, or do you know what I mean? Like, have you explored that kind of options? We go from traditional to digital and then maybe digital back to the real world or something like that?
The strategy or the plan that we are considering right now is we are going to create a DAO. specifically for the fractional ownership of one specific art piece that we're going to do. And all the DAO members, they got to vote. Not only they have part of the shares of of this piece, but they can also vote for where to exhibit the art, or where to put the art, and when or how we are going to sell, or should we sell it, and how we're gonna preserve it. And of course, you can print it out and put it on your wall. But I mean, everybody can do that. It's not only because you have one share. You can do that. You know, people can print it out, everything that they have in the internet, and put it on the wall. We cannot say it's because of the fractional ownership. But I think the real meaning for the fractional ownership is people really got one part of the shares for the very high art that they cannot afford. And they can say that, oh, I am the collector of Picasso, and I got to decide when and how my Picasso is going to be shown. And if we are going to really, in the end, we want to sell the Picasso, they got to get the revenue in the end. It's part of the investment side, I think, for the fractional.
I guess my final question for you, Sydney, is what do you think is going to be the next big wave in 2022 in the crypto space?
Yes. So after seeing all the constitution, the people DAO and the SOS DAO, that we are very quite, everybody's talking about these days. I think DAO is definitely going to be the next big hype in 2022. And not only we are trying to create a DAO for ApeNFT regarding to all the art pieces or the NFT platform that we are going to be launched, but also I think there's going to be more and more DAOs in the world that's going to change completely how the company structure is going to work, because people are going to work as DAOs. And that, I think, is the very efficient and the smart ways for us in the future. And that's where we should invest in.
Before we finish, I just wanted to pick your brains on how do you think DAOs are going to affect the way, people are going to organize themselves in the future. I am a strong believer that DAOs will disrupt the whole of society, because it's really like a new way of organizing society that we've never seen before. Do you also agree?
Definitely agree. And I think because why I am such a believer of DAO, because I do think that users need to be the ones that are more of the decision makers, and they are actually helping define the product, but they are not what's for sale. And since we are seeing that the Web 2 to Web 3, that's how DAO is going to make this happen. Yeah, I do believe that.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Sydney, for being part of this podcast. Before I let you go, do you want to give a shout out to any of your social medias or any websites?
Yes. So maybe people can follow me on Twitter. That my username is Sydney Xiong. That's it. Yeah, thanks, Sean.
Do you want to shout out ApeNFT as well, the Twitter account?
Please, our Twitter account is ApeNFT.org.
Perfect. Thank you so much for joining this podcast, and we will see you all next episode. Bye, guys.